The stars themselves seemed to bleed. Wreckage drifted across the void like the shattered bones of titans. Shattered hulls, torn apart by lance fire and torpedoes, spun in eerie silence. The battle had lasted 3 Terran days. Now it was over. Victory? No. Merely survival. A bloody, tattered retreat. The Imperium had lost this sector. Frigate Indomitable Will limped through the black, its engines barely a whisper. The once proud vessel of the Cadian 912th was now a floating coffin with less than 100 souls aboard. Lieutenant Commander Varric stood on the cracked command deck, his left eye bandaged, his uniform scorched and crusted with dried blood. The Vox was dead. Astropaths vaporized. Gellerfield flickering. The navigators were gone, killed when the bridge took a hit from a Tau ion barrage. How long until life support gives out? Varric rasped. 6 months? At best, sir, Tech Adept Keros replied, flickering behind his cracked optic lens. More if we ration atmosphere and coolant. Varric's fist clenched. We'll find something. Some rock to land on. Even a dead world. We just need time. And so, with failing engines and dying hope, the Indomitable Will vanished into the deep dark. 4 months later, the void changed. It began with a flicker on Auspex, a mass, a world where there should have been none. Keros squinted through fractured screens. That is no moon, nor any forge world on record. It filled the viewport slowly. A world of jagged plates, vast ravines, and titanic machinery. Dead machinery. There was no atmosphere, no vegetation, only cold metal stretching for thousands of kilometers. The readings made no sense. Gravity was normal, but there were structures, cities made not for men, but something else, something vast. Yet it was silent. No radio, no power signatures, no movement. It looks like the Omnissire's graveyard, one soldier muttered. They landed. The frigate touched down on a plateau the size of a hive spire. Massive towers stretched into the dark sky like blades. No storms, no movement. Just the low groan of their ship settling onto this world of iron. Exploration teams moved out within the day. Drones first, then squads of guardsmen. They spread like ants over the colossus of this world. And then they found them. Statues? No. Too intricate. Too lifelike. Dozens, hundreds of titanic humanoid machines, seemingly frozen in mid-combat, as if an ancient war had simply paused. Some were mid-strike, others tangled in a final struggle. Each stood 50, 60, even 70 feet tall. Some bristling with weapons, others more humanoid. One was locked mid-air, launching toward a massive tank-like form. A blast, frozen in time, hovered inches from its target. Lieutenant Carthis stared up at a crimson figure, its fist embedded in the chest of a towering purple foe. "Sir," one trooper whispered, "I think they're alive." In the 6th city, if it could be called that, the guardsmen found something different. A temple, not of stone or plasteel, but of alloyed circuitry and impossible mechanisms. A monolith at the center glowed faintly, as if feeding itself from some hidden power source. This structure defies known Imperial archaeotech, Keros muttered in awe. These runes are not Xenos, but they're not human either. This predates us all. Within its core was an artifact. It resembled a cube, suspended in a lattice of golden threads, humming with dormant energy. No one touches it, Varric ordered. Mark it and leave it. But in the Emperor's galaxy, such orders are rarely heeded. Private Jeren was cold, tired, dying for a ration bar. The artifact room pulsed gently as he cleaned the lenses of his las rifle. One of the drones sputtered near the lattice, and it clipped a golden thread. The cube blinked, and so did Jeren. For a moment nothing happened, but then the pulse began, slow at first, like a heartbeat. The walls lit up, circuits shimmered, and far above, in the canyon of giants, something shifted. Optics flickered, servo muscles twitched. Buried deep in rubble and iron, a massive hand flexed. Within the mind of Megatron, there was only war. And then, silence. A silence that lasted. How long? He didn't know. But now, pain, power, a surge of energy into his frame. The matrix field was shifting. The artifact, it had been deactivated. The time lock was shattered. He scanned the area. Not Cybertronians, not Autobots. They were small, organic, armed with primitive weapons. Imperial guardsmen. They were prey. His optics blazed red. The transformation was instant. A grinding chorus of shifting plates and screaming pistons echoed like a god awakening. His cannon reformed, his fusion core ignited, and the air split as he roared. I am Megatron. The guardsman had no time to scream. Megatron's fusion cannon fired once, turning 6 soldiers into vapor. Another swung his chainsword, futile against armor designed for planet killers. Megatron grabbed him mid-swing and crushed him like a tin can, blood misting into the air. Lieutenant Carthis raised his vox. Contact! Contact! Throne protect us! It's... Megatron hurled a tank-sized piece of debris into the command tower, crushing it like an insect. He laughed. The sound was not simply mechanical. It was hate given voice. The remaining troopers opened fire. Lasgon bolts sparked uselessly off his chest. One missile connected and did nothing. A brave sergeant tried to climb him, planting a melter charge at the base of his neck. Megatron caught him before he could leap away, tearing him in half with a single, wet snap. He moved like a storm, impossibly fast for his size. Plasma trails and burning bodies marked his path. And then he stopped. He looked up, across the canyon, at the other Titans. They were still frozen, but not for long. Far across the planet, the artifact's collapse had begun a chain reaction. Systems were rebooting. Circuits reconnected. Sparks reignited. Optimus Prime's optics glowed blue. Soundwave's chest emitted a pulse. Starscream's fingers twitched. The war would begin anew. But first, they must awaken. Aboard the indomitable Will, Varric stared at the feed. Megatron stood amidst the ruins of their camp, surrounded by flame and death. "Get that signal out," Varric growled. "Sir, it's broadcasting. Emergency beacon relayed across the sector. Anyone listening should hear us. Let's pray they're not the wrong ones. The Vox crackled, screaming, static. Then, this is Commander Varric of the Cadian 912th. We are on an unknown planet. There is some unknown species. Hostile. We've awakened something. Repeat, they are waking up. Emperor, save us all. The screen went black. Cybertron breathed again. For eons it had been silent, frozen in the last moment of a war that had nearly torn reality apart. The artifact, a failed temporal weapon powered by stolen energy, had frozen the Autobot-Decepticon war in its final phase. It had been a mercy. It was a final, desperate move by an ancient, neutral sect of Cybertronians who no longer existed. But now, the Imperium had meddled. The balance was shattered. The war would resume, only this time on a galactic scale. The Autobots would rise with hope, and the Decepticons, they would burn entire systems to find what they had lost. And Megatron, he had only just begun. The surface of Cybertron was quiet again. The charred remains of the Imperial Guardsmen lay strewn across the metallic plain, twisted, scorched, unrecognizable. Lasguns were shattered, Vox units crackling static into the void. The bodies smoked where Megatron had torn through them, his fusion cannon having made swift, merciless work of the humans who had dared awaken him. Above them, the sky pulsed dimly with a dying aurora, the only light reflecting off the cold adamantium towers of Cybertron's ruined cities. And deep beneath the surface, buried within the ruins of Iacon, something stirred. Far below, in the substructure of the once great Autobot capital, the dormant form of Optimus Prime rested atop a shattered stasis platform. Layers of dust coated his crimson and blue chassis, pitted with battle scars from a war fought eons ago. Faint pulses blinked across his chest. A deep blue glow spread from his optics. He remembered. The endless war. The fall of Iacon. The battle for the artifact, the Kronos Spark. And then, nothing. Systems reinitializing. A deep voice rumbled through the chamber. The Kronos Spark's temporal freeze had worn thin after Megatron's reactivation. As its failing grip loosened, time rippled outward, and Optimus Prime's internal chronometer rebooted, adjusting from unknown to plus 53,281,127 solar rotations. His fingers clenched into a fist. He rose. Massive gears groaned as Optimus stood tall for the first time in millennia. Dust and rust cascaded from his frame. The once great Autobot commander towered over the chamber, light glowing through his optics as systems came online. Megatron is awake. He stepped forward, the weight of Cybertron's past creaking beneath each step. Elsewhere, Megatron stood at the peak of a half-buried war monument, once a Decepticon stronghold, now reclaimed in blood. He gazed upon the battlefield, watching a formation of dormant Decepticons beginning to flicker with life. Starscream's optics glowed. Soundwave's systems rebooted in silence. Shockwave's logic core hummed with cold calculations. Megatron spoke with a voice like thunder scraping across steel. "We have a new enemy, the Imperium. They are a blight of flesh and arrogance. They believe this galaxy belongs to them. We will teach them otherwise." His hand clenched into a fist. "Wake the legions. We take Cybertron back, and then we take their stars." Far above Cybertron, the beacon sent by the doomed Imperial crew had not gone unheard. The black ship, Crucible of Will, exited warp translation with violent force, its psychic shields thrumming under the strain of the trip. Adorned with the sigils of the Order Xenos, its prow resembled a cathedral-turned spear, aimed at the heart of the metal world below. On the observation deck stood Inquisitor Kalen Drake, a hawk-eyed veteran of 3 Tyranid crusades. His rosette gleamed coldly against black carapace armor, and his cybernetic eye scanned the surface. "That is no Forge world," he muttered. "Nor is it a Necron tomb." Behind him stood Canoness Valeria of the Order of the Sacred Rose, her bolter in hand, flanked by 2 power-armored sisters. Nearby, a hooded tech priest, Dominus. Cables twitched from his mechadendrites as he recounted bizarre incantations. Drake turned to them. "What sleeps on this world has already drawn blood. I want reconnaissance teams deployed within the hour. Full kill teams on standby." The tech priest's voice buzzed. Omnissiah's breath. "The structures match no STC. Origin is unknown." Drake didn't blink. "Then we find out what it is, and if it threatens the Imperium," he tapped his bolt pistol, "we kill it." Back underground, Prime moved through the ruined halls of Iacon, accessing terminals long inert. He found logs, battle records, ancient transmissions, faded messages from the last days of the Autobot resistance. The last image was burned into the metal. It was a hologram of Bumblebee, wounded but ever defiant, guarding the chamber to the artifact. With great effort, Optimus pushed through fallen debris and found the stasis pod of several Autobots. He placed his hand on Ironhide's casing. It pulsed. "Come back, old friend." The chamber flared with light as Ironhide stirred. One by one, others began to blink online. Bumblebee, RC, Wheeljack, and Ratchet. "Optimus, you're alive." "We all are, because of them." Prime's optics narrowed. "But so is Megatron." Bumblebee tilted his head. "And something else is here. Organic life signatures. Heavily armed. They just arrived in orbit." Optimus looked skyward. "We have been asleep for a very long time. This galaxy will have changed in ways we cannot imagine. We must be prepared to fight to defend our people." 24 hours later, one of Inquisitor Drake's scouting teams deployed to the surface. A squad of hardened Imperial soldiers led by veteran Sergeant Riel Voss. They landed in a ruined district of Cybertron and immediately began surveying the area. They found strange glyphs, colossal structures, echoes of war machines long dead. "This place isn't abandoned," Riel muttered. They found twisted metal, humanoid in form, but enormous in size, as if some god machine had bled out. Then the shadows shifted. Starscream descended with a shriek, lasers blazing, slamming into two of the soldiers and vaporizing them in bursts of gore. The squad opened fire. Lasbolts flashed, but they were gnats facing a storm. Soundwave arrived next, silent and efficient. From his chest, Laserbeak deployed, carving through flak armor and bone alike. Within seconds, half the squad was annihilated. Ryle, bleeding, slammed his beacon. "This is Sergeant Voss. We're under attack. Hostiles are." The signal cut off as Megatron's foot came down like a hammer. "Insects. They dare trespass on my world." Elsewhere, a second Imperial dropship was deployed, this time with Inquisitor Drake himself aboard. But before they could disembark, Optimus Prime stood before them. The ship halted mid-air, the storm-grey hull dwarfed by the 30-foot warrior of chrome and firelight. He did not raise a weapon. Instead, he opened his palms. "I am Optimus Prime, and I mean you no harm." The pilots panicked. The sisters raised their weapons. Drake merely stared. "It speaks." Canoness Valeria stepped forward, bolter tight in her grip. "You are Xenos, machine spawn. You will explain your presence or be purged immediately." But Optimus didn't flinch. "I am no enemy of humanity, but if you force my hand, I will become one." Drake lowered his bolt pistol. "He speaks like a diplomat," he muttered. Optimus turned toward him. "I speak as a warrior who has seen entire planets burn, and I tell you this: Megatron lives, and if you seek war with me, you will leave him unopposed." Drake raised an eyebrow. "What is Megatron?" Back in the crucible of will, transmissions buzzed with astropaths. Voxlinks screamed with interference. Binary prayer streams warped into gibberish. A warp storm stirred beyond the system. Something had heard the artifact's activation. In the Eye of Terror, a demon prince of Khorne snarled and turned toward the stars. A world of steel and war, ripe for the taking. The blood tide would follow. Optimus stood atop a cliff, staring at the growing storm clouds swirling above Cybertron. Behind him, Autobots had reactivated defensive systems. Ahead, Imperial Valkyries roared overhead, and in the ruined heart of Kaon, Megatron stood before legions of Decepticons, their optics burning red once more. "Let them come," he growled. "Let this galaxy burn again." The air on Cybertron was thin, cold, and heavy with ancient silence. Captain Drake stood atop a jagged spire of metal, peering over the vast steel wasteland that surrounded the landing site. Beside him loomed Optimus Prime, stoic and silent, framed by the cold light of Cybertron's dead skies. Around them, the rest of the Emperor's Wrath survivors moved carefully across the alien terrain, setting up forward positions and relay stations. The chronometers ticked onward. Nearly 48 hours since the awakening of the mechanical giants and the massacre of the first detachment at the artifact vault. Optimus finally spoke. "You stand upon the world of Cybertron, home of the Autobots and the Decepticons. A war unlike any you have known raged here. A war for the very soul of our kind. Drake's jaw tightened. You're saying this planet is your origin? Yes, Prime replied. Long before your kind even walked, Cybertron burned. We fought not over conquest or resources, but over freedom itself. The Decepticons sought domination. The Autobots resisted. That war shattered our world. He paused, optics dimming as his gaze drifted toward the horizon. In the war's final days, both sides discovered a relic deep beneath the core. It was a shard of unknown power. We called it the Kronos Spark. Its power could alter time, or break it. In our desperation, we fought for it, and in that final battle, it was activated. Drake's eyes widened. You're saying that's what froze your war? Yes. It shattered the very flow of time itself. Cybertron became a tomb, locked in a single moment forever. That was until your people arrived. Drake stepped back, his mind racing. The idea of such a device, capable of freezing armies mid-strike, was unimaginable. But in the hands of the Imperium, it could be the ultimate weapon. You can take me to this spark, he asked. It is dangerous beyond imagining, Prime warned. Many of us wish it had never been found. Drake's Vox clicked silently. In the shadows and hidden from Prime's view, his squad received a coded message. Prepare to eliminate all Xenos presence and secure the artifact at all costs. Escorted by Optimus, Bumblebee and RC, Drake and his remaining squads entered the lower levels of Cybertron's vault spires. The halls pulsed faintly with restored power. Giant murals showed titanic battles between Autobots and Decepticons. Even in stillness, the ancient war screamed from every surface. At the heart of the vault, suspended within a prismatic containment field, floated the Kronos Spark. It throbbed with an eerie light, pulsing like a heart. Streams of temporal static arced across the chamber. Prime approached it reverently. The artifact is alive. It speaks to time itself. Drake stepped closer, awe in his eyes, but also ambition. If this is what paused your war, imagine what it could do in the hands of the Emperor. Optimus's voice hardened. It belongs to no one. Its power can unmake reality. But Drake was no longer listening. Behind his visor, his eyes glinted. His men, Kassakin veterans, scarred and elite, were already moving into position. Target lock confirmed. One of them whispered through the Vox. But then the floor shook. The walls trembled. Screams echoed from above. The floor exploded in fire and molten steel as Megatron crashed into the chamber, his fusion cannon glowing like a dying star. Beside him stormed Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, and a dozen black-armored Decepticons. You dare awaken us and think yourselves masters, Megatron snarled. The first blast vaporized a squad of soldiers in a heartbeat. Soundwave's sonic attack liquefied another. Starscream strafed the upper galleries, releasing micro-missiles that tore limbs and armor apart. Valeria charged with her command squad, her bolter raised. For the Emperor. Her words ended in a flash as Starscream's claws impaled her and hurled her across the vault like a ragdoll. Drake, realizing that the ambush had been turned on him, opened fire at Megatron with his plasma pistol, but the bolts splashed harmlessly off the tyrant's armor. A cruel voice answered him. Shockwave, cold and unfeeling, stepped from the shadows and fired a crimson beam that obliterated Drake's torso in a single pulse. The Imperial forces fought valiantly, bolters roaring, frag and crack grenades detonating across the chamber. For brief moments, they staggered the Decepticons, but it wasn't enough. One by one, the proud soldiers of the Imperium fell, crushed, incinerated, sliced apart by alien metal monsters. Their last stand, valiant yet doomed. The humans were utterly annihilated. Deep within Cybertron's ancient hangars, Wheeljack activated the controls of an ancient, half-buried vessel, the Ark-7, one of the last remaining Autobot warships. She's patched, powered, and pissed off Prime, but we've got incoming. The Decepticons were closing in fast. Autobots, retreat and board, Prime bellowed. There was no time to save the humans. No reinforcements. No second chances. Prime turned from the vault's wreckage and led his people through shattered causeways and burning halls straight to the Ark. Bumblebee covered the rear, blasting Seekers from the sky. RC hauled a wounded Hound to the ship. Ironhide manned the belly turret, providing covering fire. The loading ramp slammed shut. The engines flared. The Ark-7 launched, breaching the atmosphere and vanishing into the stars. Prime stood on the bridge, staring back at his dying planet. "We came looking for peace," he whispered. "Instead, we found only death." Back on the surface, Megatron stood over the torn corpses of the last Imperial defenders. Fools. They brought war and found gods. Starscream sneered, kicking a shattered bolt gun across the ruins. They had courage, but courage means nothing when you bleed like they do. Soundwave turned his head skyward. Above them, the black ship, the Crucible of Will, still lay in orbit. Target acquired, preparing artillery. Across the plains, ancient Cybertronian artillery platforms were activated. They were planet breakers, siege-class plasma batteries once used to destroy moons. They fired. White-hot lances of death screamed into orbit. One bolt struck the Crucible dead center. Fire erupted across its hull. Explosions tore through its decks. It reeled, venting bodies and debris into the void. The once proud Imperial ship now limped, dying above the very world it had failed to conquer. The Ark-7 tore from warp with a thunderclap of energy, its hull bristling with sparks as it emerged into the void above a world long forgotten. Below, a bloated, overgrown planet spun in silence, once a forge colony of the Imperium, now lost to records, abandoned centuries prior, and marked in the databanks only as designation Heraxes Beta. What once had been a world of metal and industry had now been swallowed whole by organic corruption. Towering metallic structures were choked by strangling vines and pulsing hive matter. The skies were thick with spores. Forests of bone and chitin grew where once iron had ruled. Scans painted a very dire picture. A Tyranid splinter hive fleet had made its horrifying home here. Massive biosigns, Wheeljack reported. There is movement across the entire surface, hundreds of thousands. No, millions. Prime studied the readout, his optics narrowing. And then the surface moved. From deep within the forests and corrupted ruins, the jungle exploded with life. Chittering shrieks echoed across the valley. Swarming gaunts surged out of the undergrowth like a tidal wave, accompanied by towering warrior forms, bristling with weapons grown from bone. Massive, tank-sized monsters with hardened carapaces and hammer-like limbs crushed the trees as they charged forward. "They've seen us," Ironhide muttered, loading his cannons. "It's time to make some noise." The landing ramp dropped, and the Autobots charged into war. Bumblebee and RC were the first to meet the swarm. Bumblebee moved like lightning, flipping over rock and root, his dual energon pistols blasting clean through gaunt skulls. RC followed close behind, her twin blades flashing arcs of violent light. She cut through the front wave with deadly elegance, severing limbs and heads in rapid succession. "They're endless," RC shouted, slicing through a leaping Tyranid mid-air. "Then let's give them an ending," Bumblebee replied, sliding beneath a lunging warrior and unloading a blast into its chest. Wheeljack remained at mid-range, raining down high-impact seismic grenades. Each blast sent shockwaves through the terrain, hurling dozens of Xenoths into the air. He deployed automated turrets that sprayed arcs of plasma across the swarm, tearing through entire broods in seconds. Ironhide was a one-bot wrecking crew, cannons blazing. He bulldozed through Carnifexes with sheer force, grabbing one by the horn and slamming it headfirst into a boulder, before finishing it with a point-blank blast to the chest. A second beast lunged. Ironhide caught its claws, twisted it, and ripped them from its sockets with a roar. "You picked the wrong planet to infest," he growled. Then came Optimus Prime. The air split with a deafening roar. From the sky, Optimus Prime descended like divine judgment, slamming into the Tyranid swarm with a seismic shockwave that cracked the earth. The horde recoiled, stunned, and then surged forward in renewed frenzy. Prime's ion axe ignited with crackling power. He swept the weapon in wide arcs, cleaving through monstrous Xenos as though they were grass beneath a farmer's scythe. A Carnifex lunged. Optimus met it head-on, catching its claws and driving a blade through its skull in a single, brutal motion. "They will not break us," Prime thundered, firing his ion blaster into a wave of leaping gaunts, disintegrating them mid-air. "Autobots, hold the line." A barbed Tyranid beast hurled a volley of acidic spikes. Prime rolled under the attack, transformed mid-motion into his armoured transport form, and ploughed through a wall of biomass and bone, scattering enemies in all directions. He transformed back, launching missiles into the very heart of the hive mass. Above the battlefield, Wheeljack deployed a mortar drone that rained fire into the oncoming tide. Ironhide crushed a Tyranid warrior beneath his heel and pulled a second in half with a hydraulic-assisted lunge. RC danced among the chaos, her blades flowing like water, and Bumblebee unleashed rapid-fire death, weaving through the swarm like a thunderbolt. The Tyranids howled as their ranks were broken. Hive synapses flickered with confusion. Then, suddenly, they stopped. The swarm reeled backward, dragging corpses and wounded with them into the corrupted jungle. The ground trembled with their defeat. Massive beasts called out across the ruined forests, and within moments, the Xenos vanished into the choking mist. Optimus lowered his axe. They retreat, temporarily. Wheeljack grunted. They wouldn't do that unless they're reorganizing for something worse. Which means we leave. Now, Prime ordered. The Autobots reboarded the Arc-7 and fired the engines into full thrust. The ship tore free from the planet's diseased atmosphere, flaming spores clinging to its hull. But the void above was no longer empty. Hundreds of sleek, advanced ships hung in formation. It was a Tau warfleet. Unknown signature, RC said grimly from the sensor panel. They must have tracked us here. On the main display, a larger Tau vessel broadcast a tight beam hail. This is Commander Tashvar Case of the Tau Empire. Identify yourselves. Optimus stepped forward, his optics steady. I am Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots. We are not your enemies. There was a pause. The Tau officer appeared on screen, a tall, broad-shouldered Firecast commander wearing ornate orange armor. His tone was diplomatic, but cautious. You are alien, but intelligent. You do not bear the marks of the Great Devourer or the Warped Ones. Explain yourselves. Optimus inclined his head. We seek only peace. We defended ourselves against this alien horde. We mean no harm to your kind. The Tau commander studied him, clearly intrigued, but skeptical. You will submit to boarding. For negotiations. Optimus nodded slowly, though his fists remained clenched. Understood. But we come in trust. Do not test our restraint. Far across the galaxy, the skies above Cybertron split with unnatural crimson light. The Decepticons had fully reawakened. War factories churned once more, and massive warships took shape under Megatron's iron rule. Dozens of new Seekers screamed through the upper atmosphere. Dreadnoughts were forged in the depths. The planet's forges burned with one purpose. But then a storm opened. A vortex of madness and flame tore reality itself apart. The warp bled into the physical world, bathing Cybertron in howling winds of demonic energy. Lightning clawed at the sky. From the rift surged the forces of chaos. Khorne's warriors descended like a flood. Chaos Space Marines, red-armored giants wielding chain blades and axes carved from blood-forged steel. They slammed into Cybertron's defenses with unrelenting fury. Their war cries were deafening. Skulls for the Skull Throne. At their head strode a demon prince of Khorne, towering, horned, a mountain of blood-soaked muscle and warped steel. His wings spread wide, shadowing entire battalions. His axe was a monolith of death, glowing with hateful runes. Megatron stood on a fortress balcony, watching them descend. He smiled. Let them come. The clash was titanic. Decepticon turrets rained plasma and missiles down upon the invaders. Seekers performed strafing runs, shredding squads of berserkers with focused fire. Ground forces deployed mass driver cannons and energon-fed rifles. shattering Chaos warriors with high-impact detonations. But the Chaos Space Marines were faster and stronger than the men that they had faced before, each one a demigod of war. A Hellbrute tore through 2 Decepticons before a Skywarp missile ended its rampage. A Defiler climbed the outer wall, only to be tackled and thrown into the city's energon reactor by Blitzwing. Blood and metal coated the ground. Both sides were taking losses, but neither retreated. The Demon Prince surged forward, laughing with manic joy. "You dare defy Khorne?" Megatron met him at the gates of the Fusion Spire, alone. Their clash cracked the air itself. The Demon Prince's axe came down like a thunderbolt, but Megatron caught it with both arms, sparks flying from his servos. He drove a knee into the demon's chest and countered with a blow from his fusion cannon that staggered the beast. "You are no god," Megatron snarled. "You are just another fool who thinks he can defeat me." The demon roared and swung again, his blade carving deep gashes in Megatron's armor. Blood sprayed. Megatron responded with a brutal headbutt, followed by a spinning strike from his energon mace that shattered one of the demon's horns. They fought like titans, one forged in the warp, the other in Cybertron's deepest crucibles. The demon shrieked, wings flaring wide, but Megatron surged forward and drove his fist straight through its chest. The demon staggered, then laughed, even as warp energy poured from its wound. "This body dies, but more shall come. Khorne watches now. He sees you." The demon erupted in a column of fire, vanishing in a warp scream that echoed across the heavens. Megatron stood, scorched and bleeding, the sky above him torn by war. His optics narrowed. "Then let him watch." The conference chamber aboard the Tau command vessel was a dome of glass and radiant hololiths, suspended in low orbit above Hiraxi's beta. Outside, the curve of the planet burned green with polluted jungles and the ghost light of retreating Tyranids. Stars shimmered like the eyes of sleeping gods. Optimus Prime stood at the chamber's center, towering, regal, scarred from the battlefield, but unbowed. Around him, Tau commanders sat in crescent thrones of light and steel, their faces unreadable behind high-collared armor and holographic interfaces. "We call it the greater good," said Commander Tashvar Kais. His voice was calm but resolute, his hands folded behind his back. "It is more than a philosophy. It is a destiny. Every being in the galaxy must serve a purpose, to elevate life, to bring order, to unify." Optimus nodded slowly. "A noble ideal. And how is this unity enforced?" Tashvar's gaze flicked. "Through understanding, where possible. Through strength, where required." Prime's optics dimmed in thought. "I have seen countless wars waged in the name of unity, but few offer peace that is not born of domination. We do not dominate, we guide. And when guidance is refused..." A pause. Then Tashvar admitted, "We make hard decisions for the greater balance." Optimus turned, walking slowly around the hololith display that hovered in the chamber's center, showing Cybertron as a mostly dormant husk, faint signals still pulsing from the Kronos spark, buried deep within its core. Cybertron was once the jewel of machine life, he said. A planet forged by the Allspark, home to a race born not of flesh, but of light and metal. We ruled ourselves until we tore our world apart in civil war. The Tau listened in silence as Prime continued. I lead the Autobots, Megatron, the Decepticons, brothers in origin, divided by belief. The war consumed us. Our worlds slept. We drifted in stasis as the stars changed and entire empires were born and died. You were dormant, a Tau Ethereal asked. For how long? Millions of your years. Shock rippled through the room. Even the usually stoic Firecast exchanged surprised glances. You awoke in our time, and the galaxy was already aflame, murmured the Ethereal. Yes, Prime said. And now forces darker than just the Decepticons are aimed at Cybertron. If others discover the Kronos spark, it could mean annihilation for all. Tashvar leaned forward. We intercepted fractured transmissions, psychic echoes, fragmented coordinates shared across Orc pirate clans, Chaos warbands, even elements of the Imperium. They all point to this sector, to Cybertron. Optimus narrowed his optics. Then they are coming. They already are, Tashvar confirmed grimly. The Imperium is mobilizing a fleet. Chaos incursions increase every cycle, and the Eldari whisper of a storm of machines and madness. There is only one path forward then, Prime said. An alliance. Tashvar's eyes gleamed. Explain. If the Tau Empire aids the Autobots in reclaiming Cybertron, we will share our technology, our knowledge of spacefold engines, energon refinement, autonomous construction protocols. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Ethereal raised a brow. Even in the face of extinction, you would trade the fruits of your ancient science. I would, Prime said, but with a condition. Tashvar crossed his arms, which is, the Kronos spark must be destroyed. Now the chamber fell silent. Tashvar stepped forward. You would destroy your own relic. It is not a relic. It is a weapon. One that can twist time, rewrite fate, erase entire civilizations. Even now it calls to those who should not answer. Megatron once sought only control of Cybertron, but if he unites that hunger with the Kronos spark, he could take over the entire galaxy. The Tau Commander's face was unreadable. And you would give up your own claim to such power. Optimus turned. I would give up anything to stop another war like ours. Tashvar's expression tightened. His gaze drifted to the hololith. Finally he nodded. The Tau Empire will aid you, Optimus Prime. Back on Cybertron, vast scars marred the planet's surface. Broken cities, shattered towers, rusted bones of fallen titans. But now, there was life again. Factories stirred, forge fires burned, skyways flickered with Decepticon warcraft. In the shadow of Iacon's ruins, Megatron stood beneath a banner of molten metal, watching as his warriors rebuilt their dominion. Shockwave approached from the forges, energon stains across his chassis. Repairs to orbital cannons are 63% complete. Stratosphere control within 20 solar cycles. Supply lines stabilized. And this warp rift, Megatron asked. Sealed, for now. A sea of Decepticons worked below, constructing walkers, dropships, artillery. Hundreds of frames were raised every hour. That demon prince is dead, Shockwave continued. The Chaos forces are destroyed, but residual warp influence remains across Sector 9. Their taint lingers. Megatron's gaze swept over the fields of war. Fires burned where fallen berserkers were thrown into mass pyres. Massive servo cranes lifted twisted hellbrutes into smelters. Sparkless Decepticon bodies were gathered in silence. The price of victory. "We have bled," Megatron said, his voice low. "But we endure. We always endure." He walked among his warriors. Soundwave knelt in reverence. Starscream hovered nearby, damaged but alive. Thundercracker barked commands at repair teams. Cybertron beat again, with iron and war. But then, there was a voice. It began as a whisper, a low hum like a distant drum. Skulls. Megatron staggered slightly. Shockwave noticed. "My lord?" Megatron waved him away, silently, and stepped into the shadows of the command vault. Alone, he stared into the darkness, into the reflection of his own battle-scarred face. Then he heard it again. "War is your truth, Megatron. You do not build, you destroy. You do not just rule, you conquer." The shadows twisted. "I watched you tear my prince apart. I felt your fury. You could break worlds. You could lead a crusade beyond time." "Who are you?" Megatron growled. "I am the storm you already worship. I am battle incarnate. I am Khorne." A vision blazed before his eyes. Cybertron reborn as a throne world of blood and iron. Megatron was at its center, his fusion cannon dripping with warp fire, commanding not just Decepticons, but legions of Chaos warriors, bound to his will. Entire sectors burning in his name. Even Primarchs were kneeling. Take the spark, Megatron. Take the power. Become not just warlord. Become a god. Megatron's fingers curled into a fist. He could feel the promise in his circuits. The rage. The raw, burning truth of it. Then, a smile crossed his lips. Not one of peace, one of hunger. Back aboard the Ark-7, repairs were underway. Wheeljack deployed drones to reinforce armor plating. Bumblebee and RC coordinated resource supply with the Tau's Earthcast. A shared databank was established. Cybertronian tech syncing with Tau interface protocols. Both sides worked in cautious tandem. In the strategy chamber, Optimus stood beside Commander Tashvar, reviewing updated scans of Cybertron. "We estimate 3 standard weeks before the Imperium arrives in force," Tashvar said. "Their fleets are slower, but relentless. Once they see what's on Cybertron, they'll unleash Exterminatus if they must. They will try to purge what they do not understand," Prime said. "And they do not understand us, or the spark. No, which is why we must act first." RC entered, her expression grim. Long-range scans confirmed several Orc cruisers headed toward the sector. And something else. A Necron tomb world went dark 2 days ago. There are signs its entire fleet has been redirected. Tashvar narrowed his eyes. "They're all converging. All of them. The spark calls to them," Prime said. "It will call to everyone soon." The Tau commander looked at Prime. "Then let us be the ones who answer first." The alliance was forged. Cybertron. Megatron walked among his dead, watching the flames rise. The Decepticon stood tall behind him, battered but invincible. Then he looked to the sky. He could feel it now. They come. Tau, Autobots, Orcs, the Imperium, all of them, drawn by the spark. He turned to the depths of the planet, the vault where the Kronos spark lay dormant, pulsing like a heartbeat in the metal veins of the world. And behind him, unseen, the red haze of Khorne's presence gathered in the air. Megatron closed his optics and smiled. The Tau fleet hung in the stars like a predator above its prey. Sleek, crescent-shaped warships, adorned in pale blue livery, gliding through the black void. Among them, the Arc-7 cruised in formation, patched and rebuilt, yet no less formidable. Within its armoured hull, the Autobots stood ready. Optimus Prime surveyed the looming form of Cybertron from the command deck. A planet of metal and shadow, ancient wounds glowing faintly beneath the surface. A sense of unease settled across his spark. Commander Tashvar Case approached behind him. No resistance. No response. No orbital cannons. It feels wrong. It is a trap, Optimus said. So let's spring it on our terms. Prepare all forces, Tashvar ordered. If this is an ambush, they will regret it. Thunderous jets roared as Tau Mantas descended onto the surface of Cybertron. Teams of fire warriors, battle suits and armoured drones fanned out, accompanied by the Autobots, towering figures of chrome and energy, scanning every ruined alley and shattered skyscraper. The surface was eerily still. No patrols, no gunfire, just wind whistling through the empty bones of cities. Dull red light bathed the terrain. The silence was wrong. As the Tau and Autobots fanned out across the ruined cityscape of central Cybertron, unease rippled through their ranks. The once proud towers of Iacon stood like tombstones, cracked, silent, dead. The wind whispered through the bones of a world long at war, carrying no life, no resistance. "Where are they?" murmured Tashvar, stepping over the blackened wreckage of a long-dead Sentinel drone. Scans showed mass movement. They were here. Optimus walked at his side, each step resonating with weight and memory. "They are still here," he said. His optics swept across the silent buildings. "I feel them." From above, Seeker drones hummed through the air, scanning the ruins with Tau precision. Nothing. No energy signatures, no heat trails. Then, a vibration. Subtle, deep, like a heartbeat rising from the earth. "There's movement beneath us," Wheeljack called out. "Multiple readings. It's... Wait." The plaza groaned. With a deafening crack, the ancient metal beneath their feet split wide open. Entire slabs of ferrocrete and adamantium buckled and shattered. What had seemed like debris, rusted girders, fallen statues, scrap piles. They all shifted. With a hellish roar, the battlefield itself came alive. What had seemed like ruins became limbs, rubble folded into armour. Collapsed buildings unfurled into cannons. Craters exploded outward as massive shapes burst from below. Decepticons, but not as they once were. Twisted and reborn, they rose like war gods. Their chassis bore dark glyphs, pulsing with warp light, crimson runes carved into every plate. Their optics blazed with corrupted fury. Smoke hissed from vents that now bled fire. Some had sprouted horns from their helms. Others had flesh-like cables writhing from their joints. Weapons fused with their arms in grotesque union of demon and machine. Soundwave rose first, his body crackling with static and shadow. His visor bled red light, and his voice came as a guttural, layered chant of forbidden code. Starscream followed, screeching from above. His wings warped into jagged blades of bone and black flame. He moved with unnatural speed, laughing as he dove into the fray. Even the Seekers were different now. Once sleek and streamlined, they now had wings shaped like the scythes of death, trailing fire and shadow as they circled overhead like vultures of ruin. And then, from the deepest crevice of the shattered plaza, Megatron emerged. A colossus of rage and ruin. He towered over his king like a dark god. His armor was warped and layered, blackened and edged in burning crimson. His fusion cannon was no longer merely a weapon. It screamed, a living engine of chaos and slaughter, dripping molten slag. On his back, a colossal blade, edged with the mark of Khorne. It radiated heat with every breath of wind. Behind him, a crimson mist swirled, thick with the scent of blood and ozone. It wrapped around him like a cloak, whispering oaths of carnage in ancient tongues. Megatron's optics blazed with warp fire, and his voice was thunder. Welcome home, Prime. Hostiles, engage. Defensive formation Delta 3. Commander Tashvar's voice snapped across the comms like a lightning bolt. The Tau didn't hesitate. With trained precision, fire warriors snapped into formation. Pulse rifles ignited in a wave of plasma fire, lighting up the battlefield in brilliant cerulean arcs. Railguns on broadside suits launched kinetic lances that punched holes through the sky. Crisis suits roared forward, launching salvos of missiles and plasma bolts into the rising Decepticons. Autobots, defend the Tau, Optimus bellowed, transforming mid-run. His wheels screeched across the fractured metal. Then he launched into the air and slammed into a chaos-infused Seeker, cleaving it in two with his Energon axe in a blaze of orange light. The battlefield exploded into chaos. From the cliffs above, Shockwave emerged, his single optic now a swirling vortex of warp energy. He fired a beam of pure entropy, tearing through a Tau tank and warping the ground into a twisted black mass. Fire warriors screamed as corrupted Viacons charged, once uniform machines, now mutated with writhing tentacles and fanged maws. One bore the skulls of humans, Eldar, and even other Decepticons, fused into its chest like a grotesque trophy. A riptide suit deployed a shimmering force field just in time to block a blast from Starscream, who dove like a banshee, trailing flames in his wake. The counter-volley lit the sky, sending shockwaves rippling through the ruins. In the air above, Thundercracker and a Tau Barracuda clashed in a savage aerial ballet, twisting, diving, exchanging fire that lit the towers with brilliant explosions. Debris rained down as one of the towers collapsed under their fury. On the ground, bumblebees zipped through the chaos, taking down corrupted drones with precise shots to the fuel lines. He skidded under a falling support beam and hauled a wounded Earthcast technician to cover, shielding him with his own body. They're stronger, Bumblebee shouted over the comms. Faster! It's not just upgrades, it's something else. Wheeljack ducked under a plasma burst and fired a grav cannon, sending a Chaos Decepticon slamming into a wall. It's this warp, he growled, his eyes wide with disbelief. Megatron's made some pact. He's turned them all into monsters. Elsewhere, RC and Commander Tashvar fought back to back. RC moved like a whirlwind, her twin energon blades slicing through berserkers, whose jaws were filled with spinning saws, and whose torsos leaked some black liquid. Tashvar fired a pulse carbine with one hand, while the other controlled a drone shield that blocked an incoming blast. We hold this line, he barked. RC stabbed through a snarling Decepticon's optics, then kicked it into a pile of rubble. We don't hold anything unless we break that line of walkers. On the ridgeline, Chaos-enhanced Decepticon walkers stomped into view. Giant war machines now twisted and burning with demonic fire, each footfall cracking the ground. Railguns struck them, but barely slowed their advance. Starscream shrieked above, rallying his own winged elites. Rip the flesh from their bones, spill their blood for the glory of Megatron and for the Blood God. Beneath the smoke and screams, an unholy chant began to rise. Blood for the spark. Blood for the spark. The ground shivered, and somewhere, amidst the fire and steel, Megatron walked forward, silent, immense, his eyes locked on one target alone. On a blasted ridge above the battlefield, Megatron stood with his sword drawn, sparks and blood staining his chassis. The wind howled, ash swirling around him like ghosts. He turned as Optimus Prime climbed the ridge. Still hiding behind your ideals, brother, Megatron sneered. Optimus said nothing. He stepped forward, slow and resolute. With a flick of his arm, his energon axe ignited in a blaze of cerulean light. I do not fight just for truth, Prime said. I fight to stop monsters. Megatron roared, raising his corrupted blade. The sky itself seemed to bleed. The wind silenced. Every warrior on the battlefield turned as the two titans faced each other. Then come here, Autobot, Megatron snarled, and die a martyr. Optimus leapt. The battlefield froze as their weapons collided, light and darkness erupting in a storm of power. The battlefield roared with war. Explosions lit the ruined towers of Cybertron like firecrackers in a funeral pyre. Tau battlesuits launched plasma salvos. Fire warriors traded fire with corrupted Viacons, and Seeker drones raced overhead like angry hornets. But high above all this chaos, all eyes were drawn to a single ridge. Optimus Prime stood firm, his axe ignited, his optics glowing with burning resolve. Across from him, chaos-infused Megatron loomed like a war god from the depths of the warp. His crimson blade shimmered with bloodlight, his fusion cannon throbbed like a living organ of hate. They charged. Steel met steel in a thunderclap that cracked the earth. Prime's axe arced through the air, colliding with Megatron's demon-forged sword in a clash of force so great it sent shockwaves throughout the ridge. Sparks rained down. The wind screamed. Megatron laughed, pushing Prime back. Still you cling to your honor, brother. You should have knelt. You could have ruled beside me. Optimus shoved forward, his own voice like thunder. I will never kneel to chaos. They clashed again. Megatron moved like a beast unchained, faster, stronger than he had ever been. His blade struck like a thunderstorm, and his fusion cannon roared with warp fire, slamming Prime into a shattered wall of ferrocrete. Optimus groaned as his armor cracked, energon spilling from his side. But he rose, defiant. But Megatron was on him again, his blade sweeping, carving trenches into the earth. Below the ridge, the battle still raged. Tau broadsides fired rail cannons into Chaos Walkers, while stealth suits blinked through the shadows, cutting down twisted Decepticons. Bumblebee led a squad through collapsing ruins, protecting engineers. Tashvar rallied the Fire Warriors, his carbine blazing. But above, their leader struggled. Megatron battered Optimus to his knees. "You are weak," he hissed. "The old ways are dead. I am reborn." He raised his blade for the killing blow, and a monstrous roar shattered the sky. A comet of fire slammed into the ridge. Metal shrieked, stone burst, and out of the inferno rose a nightmare of teeth and fury. Grimlock. In his Tyrannosaurus form, the Dinobot King roared so loudly it made the battlefield tremble. His jaw clamped down on Megatron's shoulder, biting through corrupted armor with primal fury. With a sickening crunch, Grimlock ripped Megatron's right arm clean off. Megatron screamed. The Decepticons faltered. Across the field, Chaos-forged Viacons and Seekers hesitated. Starscream shrieked in alarm. Shockwave turned his optics skyward. The arrival of the Dinobots had shattered their momentum. From the fire emerged Slag, Swoop, Snarl, and Sludge, each transformed and rampaging. Swoop strafed the sky, unleashing missiles into Decepticon formations. Slag plowed through a line of Berserker drones, goring them with his horns. Snarl's tail lashed like a wrecking ball, crushing corrupted walkers. Sludge slammed his massive feet, causing shockwaves that knocked enemies flat. Me, Grimlock, say, "You die now." Megatron staggered, his arms sparking, corrupted metal oozing ichor. Grimlock transformed mid-roar, towering beside Prime in bot mode, wielding his energon sword like a titan. Prime rose beside him, optics blazing. "You're late." Grimlock grinned. "Me bring fireworks." With renewed fury, Prime and Grimlock charged. Optimus roared, energon axe glowing like a miniature star, blazing blue against the crimson gloom. With a sweeping arc of righteous fury, he cleaved through Megatron's corrupted blade. The demonic weapon shrieked as it shattered, fracturing with an otherworldly screech that echoed across the battlefield. Sparks and warp light sprayed outward, momentarily illuminating the ridge like lightning in a storm. "Your tyranny ends now," Prime thundered. Grimlock was seconds behind, charging like a living tank. With a guttural roar, he swung his greatsword, its edge still crackling with the fury of his transformation, and drove it deep into Megatron's side. Warped metal split like bone. Black ichor and molten circuits sprayed into the air as Megatron screamed, a terrible, raw sound of pain, yet defiance. The ground quaked beneath him as he crashed to one knee, his monstrous form spasming. His armor, once fused with the madness of the warp, cracked and faltered. The glyphs across his frame flickering and dimming. Below the ridge, the tide of war had shifted. The Tau surged forward with renewed purpose, Commander Tashvar, bloodied but unyielding, led the charge from the front. His crisis suit's plasma cannons lit up the twilight, scorching a path through retreating Chaos Decepticons. Fire warriors rallied behind him in tight formations, pulse fire raining in disciplined volleys. Drones formed shimmering barriers of light, intercepting incoming blasts. RC leapt from the shadows, spinning mid-air, her twin blades carving down a warped berserker mid-lunge. She landed in a crouch, then vaulted forward into another, clearing a path through the enemy with graceful fury. Around her, corrupted Viacons faltered under the sheer momentum of their counter-offensive. Wheeljack planted a cluster of grav charges along a narrow ravine, choked with advancing monstrosities. With a smirk, he detonated them, twisting gravity into a crushing spiral. The chasm folded in on itself, consuming half a dozen howling Decepticons in a vortex of fire and stone. Across the battlefield, the forces of chaos began to break. Starscream, his wings shredded and smoking, shrieked in desperation. Fall back, you fools," he screeched, spinning into the air and vanishing in a trail of smoke and flames. Shockwave, ever cold and calculating, slipped into the shadows, his optic fading into the void. The corrupted horde, those who had once been noble warriors, now little more than demonic husks, began to falter, then flee. Their bloodlust faltered. Their warp fire flickered. Their warlord was failing. On the ridge, Megatron was not yet done. Groaning, battered, one arm missing and the other trembling. He dragged himself upright. His fusion cannon, twisted by warp energy into a living weapon, began to glow, fueled by desperation and raw hatred. It screamed, venting heat and screaming echoes of demons trapped within its corrupted core. "You will not defeat me," Megatron rasped, his voice layered with madness and shadow. "I am war. I am wrath incarnate." Optimus stepped forward, his frame dented, scorched, his optics dimming, but unyielding. Grimlock growled beside him, blade poised. "No," Prime said. "You're a shadow of what you once were." Together they struck, axe and sword, unity and vengeance. The fusion cannon overloaded, its core detonating in a blast of unholy fire. The explosion was blinding, a sphere of crimson and black that twisted space for a heartbeat. Then came the crack, Optimus's axe cleaving through Megatron's chest. Grimlock's blade struck half a second later, driving the corrupted symbol of Khorne from his armor in a shower of sparks and flame. Megatron staggered, his mouth open in silent rage. The symbol of Khorne searing away from his chest like burning paper. Warp energy poured from the wound, howling into the void. A final scream tore from his lips, not of fury, but of loss, before his body crumpled forward in a heap of smoking ruin. He fell. Silence rolled across the battlefield like a tide. The wind stilled. The sky, once thick with smoke and blood, seemed to pause. Below, the battle all but slowed to a halt. The remaining Chaos Decepticons turned in horror as their dark champion lay motionless on the ridge. Without Megatron's will to bind them, they faltered. Then, like a collapsing tide, they broke completely. What remained of the corrupted horde turned and fled, scattering into the steel canyons and shadowed wastes of Cybertron. The warp fire dimmed, the unholy chant died in their throats. Retreat became a full rout. Above it all, Optimus Prime stood, scorched and battered, his armor dented and blackened. He loomed over the ruined body of Megatron. Grimlock stood beside him, teeth bared, engine still rumbling in his chest. Blood and oil dripped from his teeth. Prime's optics dimmed for a moment. There is so much death, even now. Grimlock looked over and snorted. He dead now. That's good enough for me. Footsteps approached from behind. Commander Tashvar climbed the ridge, armor scratched and smouldering, his pulse rifle still red hot. He paused beside the two giants, breathing hard. Around them, fire warriors and Autobots were gathered, tired, battered, but alive. Tashvar gave a curt nod. Cybertron still burns, but the planet is ours. Optimus turned to him slowly, glancing down at his ruined planet beneath their feet. Then we begin again, he said. Together. Grimlock stretched his arms, his engine cooling. Me not good at rebuilding, me better at breaking. Wheeljack limped up, smoke rising from one shoulder. You and me both, buddy. Prime allowed himself a rare smile. The battlefield below was quiet. The fires smouldered, but they no longer raged. The sky, once choked with black clouds and warp fire, began to clear. Stars blinked through the haze above Cybertron for the first time in millennia. RC stood near a ruined column, watching the sky. Is it over? She asked softly. For now, Prime answered. High above, the Tau ships drifted into formation, silent guardians over a wounded world. For the first time in ages, Cybertron knew a stillness not born from death, but from the hope of peace. Smoke still lingered over the scarred surface of Cybertron. Craters glowed with molten metal. The once sacred cities of Iacon and Kaon were reduced to haunted husks. Their spires were shattered, their great circuits torn like veins. But there was life. Tau engineers moved quickly, erecting sensor arrays and reactivating old Autobot turrets. Crisis suits patrolled the ridgelines. Fire warriors stood guard in tight formations. Drones hummed through the air like silent hawks. Wheeljack oversaw the reactivation of energon conduits beneath a cracked platform. We're stabilizing the eastern node, he said, welding circuits with practiced speed. If we can get Cybertron's grid humming, we'll have shields back online. Nearby, RC helped a wounded Swoop to his feet, energon still leaking from a wing joint. Easy there, you did great. Swoop winced but nodded. We hit him hard. That counts for something. Above them, the Autobots' flagship, the Ark Reforged, drifted in low orbit, escorted by sleek Tau cruisers. Their combined fleet was battered, but mostly intact. Drones relayed planetary scans. Cybertron's defenses were rising again. Optimus stood upon a high platform overlooking the central plaza. Grimlock waited beside him, his arms crossed, his own eyes scanning the skies. Commander Tashvar approached, removing his helmet. We've held the surface, barely, but the warp storms are thinning. That means others will come. Optimus nodded. Then we prepare. Tashvar glanced upward. I hope we're ready for what's next. The warning came in a burst of static. Unidentified warp signatures. Hundreds. Impossible count. They're closing fast. Above Cybertron, reality tore. 1,000 bright pinpricks split the void. Warp rifts bled across the heavens as the Imperium screamed open. One by one, ships of the Imperium emerged, mighty battleships, colossal carriers, and the cathedral-like silhouettes of Gloriana-class flagships. The Aquila shone on their hulls, and each vessel burned with righteous fury. Admiral Gaius Helbrecht of the Imperial Navy stood upon the command deck of the Judicator Eternal, his eyes locked on the cursed planet below. "Cybertron," he said with venom. "The heart of Xenos corruption. Let it burn." His fleet opened fire. Orbital bombardment began in earnest. Lance batteries lit the sky. Cyclonic torpedoes plunged downward like the fists of wrathful gods. Planetary crust cracked as entire sectors were annihilated. Iacon shuddered. The ruins of Chaon disappeared in a rising mushroom cloud. The Ark Reforged took a direct hit to its dorsal shields, sending it reeling. 2 Tau ships were obliterated within seconds, their reactors rupturing in twin novas of plasma. Wheeljack's voice screamed over the comms. "We're being pounded. Shields are already at 30%. RC shouted, "We need to get underground, now." The Autobots and Tau retreated beneath the surface as fire rained from above. Grimlock transformed and carried 3 wounded warriors on his back through the wreckage of a ruined skybridge. Tashvar barked orders through gritted teeth. "Brute Beta 3, abandon the outer defences. We regroup in the ancient halls." As Optimus led the retreat through the collapsing gates of Cybertron's underlayers, he paused. He turned back toward the burning sky, watching a dozen Imperial gunships descend like vultures. A familiar rage built in his chest. Not hatred, but sorrow. "They came not to save," he muttered, "but to destroy like all the others." Warp cracks tore jagged scars across the void, rending reality with howling bursts of green and violet flame. Space twisted and screamed as the Imperium vomited forth a new storm of madness. Through the breach came thunder. Ramshackle vessels burst from the warp. Massive, crude constructs of rusted metal, scavenged armor, and sheer anarchic will. Orc-kill cruisers, rocks, and looted hulks surged into real space like a tide of steel and fire. Bristling with cannons, wreathed in smoke, daubed in lurid reds and crude glyphs of war, they came howling with the sound of 1,000 engines and 1,000,000 screams. War. The lead vessel, a behemoth of welded nightmares known only as the Skullcracker, slammed full speed into an Imperial cruiser, tearing it in half with a thunderous explosion of metal and fire. Wreckage rained in orbit as the Greenskin Warfleet opened fire with a cacophony of shock attack guns, mega cannons, and rockets so unstable many detonated mid-flight, only to be followed by countless more. Boarding torpedoes the size of buildings crashed into Imperial hulls like meteors, unleashing rampaging mobs of boys and knobs, screaming and laughing as they hacked through corridors and hacked through the crew. Admiral Helbrecht, aboard the Vengeful Resolve, staggered as the bridge shook under impact. The hollow display twisted under the sudden influx of new warp signatures. "Greenskins," he spat, his voice a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Here, at Cybertron, this is madness." "Sir, Orc signatures are multiplying across the sector," an officer stammered. "They're engaging our flanks, breaking formation." "Hold the line," Helbrecht roared, but even as he spoke, another vessel beside him, a Gothic-class cruiser, was torn apart by a rock that simply crashed into it at full speed. exploding with insane laughter echoing through its vox channels. The orbital battlefield became a churning maelstrom of fire and wreckage as Orc ships plunged into the fray from all directions, heedless of strategy, consumed only by the hunger for battle. Their chaos threw the Imperial siege into confusion. Formations were shattered, commands lost in the scream of interference and combat. Below, on the burning surface of Cybertron, the sudden pause in the barrage was felt like a gasp of air after drowning. The bombardment stilled, if only briefly. Commander Tashvar looked skyward, his vision flaring as he zoomed in on the chaos above. What, in the Ethereal's name, is happening up there? Drones hovered uncertainly behind him, scanning the heavens as Orc ships danced among Imperial vessels in chaotic fury. For a heartbeat, the sky was filled not with fire from orbit, but with burning debris and flashing void flares of ship-to-ship combat. Standing atop a shattered spire of Cybertronian steel, Optimus Prime watched the unfolding storm. The burning green of Orc weapons cast reflections in his blue optics. Smoke and ash swirled around his silhouette. "It is not salvation," he said quietly. "Not yet." His voice carried across the command channel, steady as iron. "But it is a reprieve, a second storm to shield us from the first." His hand clenched around the haft of his axe. "And we will use it." With Imperial fire redirected toward the Orcs, the Autobots and Tau descended into the deepest layers of Cybertron. They passed ancient vaults and hollowed tunnels, forgotten roads once used by the original Primes. Glowing glyphs blinked faintly in the walls. Energy coursed slowly through conduits, not touched in 1,000 millennia. Wheeljack marveled. "These systems, they're waking up." Grimlock snarled, his optics narrowing. "Something watching us." Optimus moved forward, deeper than any Cybertronian had walked since the Age of Origin. And then he heard it. A voice. It echoed not in his ears, but within his spark. It was vast, ancient, an ocean of memory and will. Optimus. He fell to one knee, light blazing from his chest. Energy rippled through the walls. Tau warriors backed away, their weapons raised, unsure. "Stand down," Tashvar ordered. "Something sacred is happening." "You have awakened me, my child," the voice said, echoing through Optimus's core. "Cybertron bleeds. The evil above wounds me. The fire of war scars my circuits." Optimus struggled to his feet, his fists clenched. "Then help us. Lend us your strength." Silence fell. But then the world trembled. Massive gears turned deep within the planet. Light coursed down the walls in rivers of radiant gold. Hologlyphs ignited across every surface. The mountain shook, and ancient machinery stirred for the first time in eons. "Then rise, Optimus Prime," said Primus, "and let Cybertron rise with you." The void above Cybertron had become a meat grinder of flame and metal. Orc kill cruisers, mad leviathans of noise and armour, hurled themselves at the disciplined ranks of the Imperial fleet. The Skullcracker roared into the path of a Retribution-class battleship, spitting rockets and fire until the Imperial Titan unleashed a full broadside. The greenskin vessel exploded in a blinding flare, debris scattering like shrapnel through the void. War. The cry died with them. Admiral Helbrecht stood tall on the bridge of his ship, his white gloves soaked in sweat, his expression carved from granite. Purge them, all of them. 1,000 guns obeyed. Nova cannon detonations lit the battlefield like miniature suns. Orc ships vaporized by lance strikes. Macro cannon barrages shredded cobbled together rocks with mechanical precision. Boarding pods launched by the greenskins were intercepted mid-flight and torn to ribbons by point defense turrets. The Orc horde died as it lived, loud, brutal, and without hesitation. Yet they fell, one by one, under the full weight of Imperial wrath. The discipline of the Imperium, bolstered by reinforcements pouring from warp gates across the system, proved too much even for the Orcs' madness. A final detonation lit the sky as a looted ramshackle battle barge exploded, torn in half by a squadron of Tempestus pattern cruisers. The last Orc vessel was gone. The green tide was broken. Orcs eliminated, reported the Vox officer. The sector is clear. Helbrecht's eyes narrowed. Good. Now we cleanse the source. He turned to his command staff. Prepare the cyclonic torpedoes. Begin exterminatus protocols. Below, Cybertron burned. The Autobots and Tau had retreated into the world's ancient depths, where the great halls of the Primes still whispered with forgotten power. But even beneath layers of reinforced metal and history, the tremors of the battle above could still be felt. Wheeljack worked furiously, interfacing with ancient terminals. They're preparing to destroy the planet. I'm picking up torpedo arming sequences and energy spikes consistent with planetary sterilization. Tashvar's eyes narrowed. Then they mean to end this once and for all. Optimus stood silent, his optics raised to the heavens. He could feel it. Primus stirred deeper now. His energy was rising like a tide within the planet's core. The pulse of a god machine echoed in his spark. Let them come, he said. Let them try. Above, the fleet maneuvered into firing formation. Dozens of cruisers aligned in tri-vector positioning. Their missile silos opened. The warheads of cyclonic torpedoes, each capable of scouring entire biospheres, locked onto their target. A single command would end it all. Primus did not speak. He moved. Deep within the planet, Cyclopean gears the size of entire cities rotated with ponderous grace. Mountains shifted. Vaults exploded outwards as panels folded in upon themselves. Lightning danced through the skies as magnetic fields went haywire. The very crust of Cybertron was shifting. Above the planet, the first Imperial ship to notice the seismic shift was the Lord Solar Vigilant. Sir, the planet, it's moving. Clarify. I mean, it's transforming. The crust of Cybertron split open. From the equator, colossal plates lifted and rotated, revealing mile-long barrels and titanic energy conductors. Entire cities rose and retracted, revealing gunnery ports and armor plating that glowed with divine energy. What had once been continents realigned into segmented armor. A central spire, taller than any tower built by man or machine, rose from the planet's core, crowned by an immense crystal burning with gold and blue light. Primus had awoken. Cybertron was no longer a world. It was a god machine reborn. Impossible, breathed Helbrecht, staring in horror as data surged across his display. This is a planetary war form. Some battle station. Cyclonic launch suspended, came the voice of the fire control officer. The auto-lock is disrupted. We've lost targeting solutions. Then fire manually, Helbrecht shouted. But it was too late. The spire of Primus lit up with unimaginable energy. What followed was not just a beam, but a judgment. A torrent of white-hot plasma, focused through crystalline lenses, lanced into the fleet like the finger of a god. Ships ceased to exist. Gloriana-class flagships cracked apart. Waves of EMP and gravatic distortion followed, turning even ships that escaped the beam into drifting wreckage. From the planetary surface, thousands of gun batteries opened fire in unison. Some were relics, others new, constructed from Tau Autobot collaboration. But now all were one, extensions of Primus's will. The fleet integrity is collapsing, cried the Vox. Shields are down, reactor breach is imminent. Brace for impact. It didn't matter. One after another, Imperial ships were wiped from the stars and reduced to falling cinders. On the surface, the Autobots and Tau emerged from the underground as the world above shifted. They watched as mile-high towers retracted into armor plating. Rivers of light flowed through conduits in the sky. Drones recorded the impossible transformation as Cybertron reshaped itself into a planetary-scale battle station of divine design. Tashvar removed his helmet. By the stars. Wheeljack stared up, awe in his voice. He's not just a god, he's a weapon. Grimlock grunted, barely hiding his admiration. Good weapon. Optimus stood on the high platform where he had once watched the stars burn. Now he watched them respond. Primus, he said. Thank you. The voice returned, echoing in every Cybertronian spark. I rise not for vengeance, but to protect what remains. The remaining Imperial ships, a mere handful, limping through the void, fled into the warp, broadcasting urgent warnings across Segmentum Obscurus. Cybertron has awoken, the transmission cried. A god machine lives. The Xenos control it. We must regroup. Warn the Ecclesiarchy. The Inquisition must see this. But by the time the signal had reached the wider Imperium, it was too late. Cybertron had vanished. Engines of impossible power folded space around it, and in a burst of multi-dimensional light, the world disappeared into the void, gone from the reach of those who would see it dead. In the silent aftermath, deep within the halls of Cybertron, the leaders gathered. Tashvar, clad in ceremonial robes of the Firecast, stood beside Optimus Prime. Grimlock, battered but unbowed, leaned against a glowing column. RC, Wheeljack, and Swoop stood close. We've seen what the Imperium is willing to do, said Tashvar. We can't go back. No, said Optimus. But we can go forward. He turned to a massive chamber, a star map projected in golden light. Primus had shown him possibilities. Other worlds suffer. Other races struggle against tyranny and madness. We were brought together for a reason. He looked around. We are not just survivors. We are a new alliance. Autobots, Tau, and soon others. Grimlock snorted. You sound like you're building an army. I am, said Optimus. One strong enough to defy extinction. One worthy of the spark Primus gave us. And in the dark beyond the stars, new enemies stirred. The Necrons, awakened by the pulse of Primus. The Tyranids, drawn by the fire of so much life. The Inquisition, now terrified of a god they could not contain. Cybertron was rising, and war would surely follow. Cybertron drifted in the void, no longer a wounded planet, but a living machine world cloaked in golden light. Its surface shimmered with new alloys and energy, like a scarred warrior reforged into a king. Cities once shattered had begun to rise again. Spires of translucent crystal grew alongside towers of battle-forged steel. Fields of metal flora, ancient designs grown from regenerative nanotech, spread across the world. At the planet's core, Optimus Prime stood alone within the Hall of Resonance, a vast cathedral of light and geometry, suspended inside a crystalline sphere deep beneath the surface. Above him loomed a singularity of form and spirit, Primus, no longer sleeping. A titanic gestalt consciousness swirled in the air, its voice not a sound, but a vibration in the soul. Light refracted into shifting symbols across the chamber walls. The will of Primus was now awake, aware, and watching. Optimus Prime, the voice echoed through every facet of the chamber. You have brought life where there was only war. You have endured the test of fire. Why do you now seek the destruction of that which I birthed? Optimus bowed his head. The Kronos spark is too powerful. Its existence threatens everything. It warped minds. It corrupted Megatron. It could fracture entire galaxies, alter time itself. No one, Autobot, Tau, human, no one should wield it. From behind him, a floating prism pulsed. The Kronos spark, its shape fluid, its glow unnatural. It pulsed like a second heartbeat in the chamber, resonating with Primus's core. It is part of me, said Primus, a shard of the eternal source. Not a weapon, but a temptation. It was forged as a test, for me as much as for you. Optimus stepped forward, his fist clenched. Then please destroy it. There was a pause. No, I will not destroy it. I will reclaim it, reabsorb what I once cast out, and let it be made whole through restraint, not fear. With that, a beam of light lanced from Primus's form, enveloping the spark. It resisted, trembling in the air, crying in voices not its own. Visions flashed across Optimus's mind, timelines, futures, other versions of himself, universes where he was tyrant, martyr, even a god. Then, silence. The spark vanished into the light. The chamber calmed. You have passed the test, Optimus, said Primus. You did not seek dominion. You sought peace. The floor beneath Optimus lit up, with circuit paths that pulsed outward, like veins through the very planet. Then I bestow upon you what I have withheld since Cybertron's fall. The mantle of Prime is yours fully. Lead our people. Reunite them, not through conquest, but through hope. Days became weeks. On the surface, the rebirth began in earnest. From the equator to the poles, reconstruction surged. Autobots of every frame type returned from hiding, from exile, from old battlefields long buried beneath rust and ash. They answered the signal of their reborn god. And some came in darker colours. Decepticons. They arrived cautiously, weathered, scarred. Some dragged their chains. Others flew under a white flag, their insignias removed or dulled. Optimus stood before them in the silver square of Nova Prime, a massive plaza reborn with solar-forged steel and energon crystal. Starscream approached first, his helm bowed. The war is over, and I'm tired of running. You will be judged by your deeds from this day forward, said Optimus, not by your past. He extended his hand. Starscream took it. Behind him came others, Thundercracker, Swindle, even Soundwave, silent but present. There were holdouts, of course, others who vanished into the dark, but for every deserter, 10 came seeking absolution. Across the skies, drone convoys carried materials. Tau and Autobot engineers rebuilt the high cities. Wheeljack and Tau Earthcast scientists fused nanoforge and pulse field technology, building defences, homes, starports and communication towers. Grimlock supervised construction the only way he knew how, by yelling until things got done. Tashvar watched the horizon, arms folded. Your people are stronger than I imagined, Prime. And we are stronger still due to our new friends, said Optimus, as he placed a hand on Tashvar's shoulder. In the high spire of Altahex, a great council was formed. Tau diplomats stood with Firecast generals. Autobots and Decepticons sat side by side. The council chamber hummed with light and purpose. We must not repeat the mistakes of the Imperium, said Optimus. Cybertron will not be an empire. It will be a refuge, a sanctuary for all those who seek freedom from tyranny, whether Xenos, synthetic or human. Grimlock grunted. Even the squishy ones. Optimus nodded. Even them. Tashvar smiled. Then we expand, peacefully, with strength, but without chains. The Autobots and Tau began sending joint expeditions to frontier systems. They offered trade, security, protection. Colonies in need found new hope in sleek Tau constructs, escorted by gleaming Autobot convoys. Worlds ravaged by chaos, orcs, or neglect became outposts of restoration. Cybertron became legend. To some, it was a myth, a machine world ruled by a god and his knight. To others, a beacon of fear. The Inquisition watched from the shadows, disturbed by rumours of a sentient planet and a Prime who welcomed heresy. Optimus knew peace was not real until it was acknowledged by those who might try to destroy them. He stood aboard the diplomatic cruiser, the Aurora Magnus, a hybrid Tau Cybertronian vessel, as it entered Imperial space under parley codes and vox hymns of peace. From its decks, envoys were dispatched to key systems, Segmentum Solar, Macrage, Mars, even Terra itself. The message was simple. Cybertron lives. We seek no war with the Imperium. We offer alliance or neutrality. Let us coexist. Let us end the cycle of death. The response? Silence. Days passed, then weeks. The drone envoys had vanished. No return signal, no debris, just nothing. Optimus felt the cold echo in his spark. "They never meant to listen," said RC. "They're afraid," replied Optimus, "and fear turns good men into killers." Far from Cybertron, in the ghost systems beyond the halo stars, a warp storm churned, an eye of darkness in the void. Long-dead worlds rotated slowly, lifeless and forgotten. Until now, in the heart of a shattered moon, buried under 10,000 layers of obsidian and bone, something stirred. A sphere of metal cracked open, exhaling dust that hadn't moved in eons. Rings of ancient circuitry lit up, glowing red. Teeth the size of towers ground together. Black gravity pulsed outward. The stars around it dimmed, and a whisper followed, one that echoed across the old machinery of the galaxy. Deep, hungry, eternal. Primus wakes, and in response, "Then so must I." The planet around it cracked open like an egg. A maw of chaos emerged, mechanical and monstrous. Spikes pierced the void. Worlds trembled. Stars died. In the shadows of the galactic fringe, Unicron opened a single eye of molten hate. His voice, deeper than black holes, colder than death, rumbled through space like a storm. "You rise, my brother, but I will devour."